There are psychological techniques that professional interrogators use to dramatically increase the odds of getting the truth out of their suspects. Some of these techniques are so subtle and clever that you can use them in your day-to-day interactions to help you get the truth out of anyone. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. In this video, we are going to cover one of the most powerful systems that I've come across in all my years of studying psychology, interrogation, behavior, body language, and this is something that you're going to be able to apply to almost every aspect of your life. You can use this in parenting, in dating, in social situations, at work, and obviously in interview and interrogation situations as well. Basically, we're going to be looking at 4 things to keep in mind in any situation where you're trying to get the truth out of someone. By simply applying these 4 things to the way you communicate and the way that you speak, you will dramatically increase your odds of getting people to open up and just tell you the truth. I'm going to give you concrete examples of how you can apply these to different areas of your life. We're going to look at actual footage of a criminal interrogation where these are being applied. And at the end of the video, I will recommend a couple of books if you're interested in learning more about these ideas and how you can use them. Let's go. Now, to support a lot of my points in this video, we're going to be looking at actual footage of these techniques being applied in the interrogation of Cassandritz Blanc, who in 2018 was arrested for the murder of his wife. And the interrogator in this case did a phenomenal job using all these techniques to slowly get a confession in that interrogation room from Cassandritz. So without further ado, let's look at these 4 techniques that will get people to open up and give you the truth more often. And coincidentally, the initials of these 4 techniques spell open. O stands for optimistic outlook. Basically, in a lot of cases when we're trying to confront someone to get truth about a situation that happened, we tend to come in with this negative attitude. Like there's this big secret that's being hidden and we're going to figure out what it is. It's this big, terrible thing. But if we just shift that, we can realize that not all bad actions have bad intentions. Sometimes the bad action or the thing that someone's trying to conceal is just a negative consequence of something that was otherwise positively intended. So here's how I go about this. I look at the action that we're trying to figure out if this person did. And I make a list of pros and cons of why someone would do such a thing. And I only focus on the pros. I don't even talk about the cons. So I focus on the good intention behind something like this. Speculate about the good intention, not the bad stuff. Now, at the end of the video, I'll give you some concrete examples of how all 4 techniques work together because they really are connected. But just for optimistic, let me give you an example. Let's say you are a parent and you come back from a trip and you suspect that your kids hosted a party at your house. Well, instead of focusing on the, oh, I know you guys always throw parties, or you guys, are always messing up the house when we're not around, instead of focusing on all that negative stuff, make a list of pros and cons. Why would they have thrown a party? Well, maybe they want to accommodate their friends. Maybe they just want to have a good time. Focus on that. So you could say something like, I've always admired the way that you try to make those around you happy, you try to make your friends happy, you like to have a good time. So we focus on that positivity and then we lead into these other techniques. But it's just such a great way to open the floor to say, I know this wasn't ill-intended. You weren't trying to cause harm. You didn't do anything wrong. I see the positive in this. Similarly, let's say you are interviewing somebody for a job and you think there might be some exaggerations in their resume. Well, you could say something like, I really like that you're ambitious and you're a go-getter and you really seem like you want this job. So instead of focusing on, you lied and you exaggerated and this isn't true, you're focusing more on their ambition, their drive, and that's why they may have exaggerated a couple of things. So again, it just sets up a way more positive vibe and encourages them to talk about this and come out with it because you're seeing the positive intention, not just the negative action. So let's take a look at how this was used in the interrogation of Cassandritz Blanc.
I understand how shit happens and I understand things just go sideways, but it sounds to me like you just made some really bad choices and found yourself in a really bad spot. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but just tell me what really happened. Like why?
So notice how even when the action is a horrible thing, a literal murder, the interrogator is saying, I get it. Sometimes things go sideways. This wasn't your intention. You weren't trying to do this horrible thing. You made some bad choices, ended up in a bad spot. He even says, I understand, I get it. So it's so much more positive, even in a horrible situation like this, than going in with, why did you do it? I know you did it. You're a horrible person. None of that. Just, I get it. Things like this happen. It happens to the best of us. I understand. So there's an optimistic outlook over the entire thing. Even at the end, he goes, it's not the end of the world. He's even optimistic about where this is going, just keeping it positive overall.
You seem like a pretty calm guy. Something just pushed you over the edge, like beyond over the edge. And I think I know, but I don't want to hear it. I don't want you to hear it from me. I want to hear it from you.
And there again, he's saying, you seem like a pretty calm guy. So in this case, it's not related directly to the action, but it's just, again, he's being optimistic about, like, you're a calm guy. I get it. Something must have happened. And then he says, I would like to know what that thing is. And that brings us to the second part of open. Now, before we look at that letter and the other two and see how they can all work together to get the truth out of people, do me a huge favor, hit that like button. It really does help get these videos out there. Hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more practical psychology videos. Okay, the P in open stands for project the blame, and it relies on a very simple psychological principle. The fact that we have a basic human need to think of ourselves as good. We don't like to think of ourselves as bad or evil or anything like that. If you ask most criminals out there, even the ones who have done horrible things in their own heads, they're not bad people. Maybe it's circumstance, maybe it's upbringing, maybe it's something somebody else did, maybe even they were protecting someone, but at the end of the day, they don't believe that they're bad in most cases. As such, when we do bad things, we like to think of them as circumstantial and not our own inner nature. We look for a scapegoat, something to blame. So if you offer these things and you make them understand that you get it, it's not their fault, something else influenced this behavior, you have a much better chance of getting them to latch onto that and say, yeah, you know what, it wasn't me, it was that thing, I'm actually good, and continue down that path to tell you the truth. Now, remember how I said all these techniques weave together really effectively? Well, optimistic outlook and projecting the blame go hand in hand almost flawlessly. So if we go back to the examples we were looking at earlier, let's go back to the kids having the party. So after you say, I've always admired how you like to make your friends happy, you like to show people a good time, you can now project the blame and say, and I bet that the intention wasn't even to throw a party. You probably just invited a friend or two and they showed up with some friends, and before you knew it, things got out of hand. So you completely project the blame on something else. That way, now we're being optimistic, the blame is being shifted, and we're already very much encouraging the person to just spill the beans. Now watch this brilliant segment from the interrogation of Cassandritz Blanc.
You made a terrible mistake, whether she pushed you into it, whether she cornered you, whether she verbally, physically, whatever, but you made a bad mistake. And there's no real correcting that mistake, but there is a getting right with it.
There it is. So he lists a bunch of reasons why this may have happened, and none of them have to do with Cassandritz. It's she did this, she did that, she pushed you, she was being aggressive, and it basically says there's no way that this has anything to do with you. He's offering all these different scapegoats to say, what is it she did? Because I know you didn't do anything. And then he says, the only thing he says about him is, you made a mistake. Once again, that's optimistic outlook. This was a mistake. There's no way it was anything else. I know it was a mistake.
I think she told you she knew something, and she threatened you or cornered you with it, and then things went bad from there.
My wife?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not playing games. I really don't know what you're talking
Okay,
about.
well then maybe I'm wrong. You tell me what happened. Just be straight with me.
Okay, so there we have project the blame plus a beautiful little gem that I'm going to talk about right now. So we see again, project the blame. I bet she had something on you and she was threatening you. Like again, he's putting that blame on her. But then the guy goes, no, I'm not trying to resist, but I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, oh, okay, so maybe I'm wrong. Why don't you tell me? So in his best-selling book, 6-Minute X-Ray, author and friend of the channel, Chase Hughes, one of the best body language analysts on the planet, talks about elicitation. He has a whole chapter, the best chapter I've ever read on elicitation, ways to get information out of people. And in that chapter on elicitation, he has a technique that he calls correcting the record, and it is comical how effectively this works. In fact, go out and try it this week and let me know in the comments. I'm sure you're gonna be mind blown by how good this is. Basically, the way it works is this. If you wanna get information out of someone about anything, instead of just asking them, take a guess, but purposely a guess that is off, that you know to be incorrect, because we have a basic psychological need to correct mistakes. And it's so difficult to fight this urge. And Chase has done this to me several times. And I knew he was doing it and still had to correct the record. So let's say, as an example off the top of my head, at work, you want to know how many vacation weeks in a year a colleague gets. Now you could go up and say, hey, how many weeks off do you get in your year? And they might go, I'm not comfortable discussing that. But if you are talking about your positions, you could say something like, oh man, I really envy the position you have. I bet you get like 7 or 8 weeks off a year. And it's ridiculously likely that they'll just go, no, what are you talking about? I only get 2 or I only get 3 or whatever it is. Because again, we have a need to correct the record. And in this interrogation, he used that technique so flawlessly. So basically, he just put something out. And the beauty of it is this. One of 2 things was going to happen. When he said, I bet she really had you in a corner and she was threatening you with something, one of 2 things was going to happen. Either Cassandritz was going to help him project that blame and go, yeah, you know what, she was threatening me, things got out of hand. Or he's going to go the other way and go, no, she wasn't threatening me. Here's what actually happened. Correct the record. So it's just this beautiful fork he sets up where either way, we're moving along the path of confession. Beautiful. I want to throw this in at this point, by the way. A lot of people might be watching this interrogation and saying, yeah, but Cassandritz is young, he's inexperienced, uneducated, he may not know his rights. Do these techniques that we're learning today work on more educated, more experienced individuals? And I can tell you from experience that I've used these things on some of the smartest people I've ever encountered in interview settings, but don't take my word for it. In the description, I'm going to leave a link to another interrogation of Colonel Russell Williams. This is a military man, very educated, definitely knows his rights, and probably even has some training in interrogation or resistance to interrogation. And his interviewer or interrogator, Jim Smyth, used these techniques and did an incredible job. He went from almost no evidence to a full confession in a multiple homicide case using masterfully the techniques that we're looking at today. So I will leave a link to that interrogation as well as an interview with the amazing interrogator with my friends over at the Behavior Panel in the description. But the only reason I want to stick to Cassandritz for this video is because I can pinpoint concrete examples of the techniques as opposed to Jim Smyth, who just weave them together so beautifully, and it's harder to just pinpoint, but we could definitely see all of them working together in his work. All right, next up we have the letter E. And E stands for emphasize the truth. Now there is a lot to say about emphasizing the truth and how to do it and why it works. And I'm going to try to keep it concise, but there's almost no interrogation out there that I've seen that I would consider successful or well done that didn't have constant emphasis on the truth. If you look at some of the clips that we already looked at for O and P, for the first 2 points, he already emphasized the truth. In the other interrogation from the description, you will constantly see him emphasizing the truth. Basically what this means is put all the emphasis on the truth. Nothing else matters. The consequences of the truth don't matter. The action itself doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is the truth coming out. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this, but one of my absolute favorite ways to do this, and this is something that I recommend for any communication, any conversation, any interview where you're trying to get truth out of someone, whether it's parenting, dating, social, workplace, and it's something that I call the honesty contract. Basically, the honesty contract is a promise to be honest and ask for a promise for honesty in return. So I might start the contract by saying something like, listen, the most important thing for me here is that we're honest with each other. I will be as transparent and open as I can with you, answer all your questions as honestly as I can, and I would really appreciate the same from you. Does that sound like something that's fair? And I wait for that confirmation for them to say yes. Furthermore, during the interview, whenever they give me something that I feel, was a little hard for them to say, I stop and I thank them for the honesty. Thank you for being honest with me. I really appreciate that. So I constantly show appreciation for that honesty. Before we look at why this works and other ways to emphasize the truth, let's look at the honesty contract in the interrogation.
The only thing I want from you, and let me make this straight from the start as well. I'm not going to play games with you. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to try to trick you into anything. Within the next few minutes, you're going to find out where I'm coming from, but quite honestly, you already know it. And it's your choice whether you decide to be honest with me. The only thing that I would ask is to not lie to me.
Okay.
And we'll figure out. I mean, there's a reason for everything. Things happen for a reason. Even though I've been at this for quite a while, sometimes I don't know those reasons. So this is just kind of a little bit of us trying to get to the bottom of this and sort out. And
Absolutely.
I don't want to make you into a bad guy. I don't know
Absolutely.
anything about you. I've never met you before.
Wow. Honestly, what a great way to start this interrogation. I love it. This is why I'm saying this guy's really good. First of all, I hope you guys noticed that besides emphasizing the truth, he also used in that little speech already O and P. Because right at the end there, he goes, I don't want to make you into a bad guy. So it's optimistic outlook. You know, you're not a bad guy. I know you're not a bad guy. There's got to be some sort of other intention here. So immediately we're staying optimistic. We're not going towards that, you're a bad person. Then project the blame. Things happen for a reason. I'm here to figure out what those things are. He literally says things happen for a reason. I want to know what they are. So we're projecting, but notice all that focus on the truth and that contract. So he says, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to play games. I'm not here to trick you. The only thing I would ask is you not lie to me. So that's exactly what I said. That is the truth contract. But why does the truth contract work so effectively? One of the reasons that I think the honesty contract works as effectively as it does is a psychological principle known as reciprocity. Now, this is something that's been studied enormously in the psychology of persuasion, and most psychologists consider it to be one of the pillars of persuasion. The concept of reciprocity dictates that when we give someone something, there is a basic human need to reciprocate, to give something back. And this is deeply genetically embedded in the way we think and the way we function. Now, although there are a lot of studies about reciprocity, both in the field and in labs, one of my favorites was conducted by Dennis Regan at Cornell University, who found that with the simple action of offering someone a beverage after having spent a little bit of time with them, that people were able to increase the sale of raffle tickets by 100%. So they sold 100% more raffle tickets when they offered someone a beverage before telling them about the raffle tickets than if they hadn't. And the beautiful thing about this is that reciprocity beat how much the person liked the ones selling the tickets. So even if they didn't like them, they were still much more likely to buy tickets because of that gesture. You feel indebted. I'll leave a bunch more links to studies on reciprocity in the description, but the bottom line is this. Someone does something for us, we feel the need to do something back. And in the honesty contract, it's the exact same thing. The moment you say, I will be honest with you, and I would appreciate the same in return, there's in the back of our mind, this thing that feels like, okay, well, it wouldn't be fair if he was honest with me and I didn't reciprocate that honesty. It just feels wrong. So it opens us up to be more honest. The second reason I think the honesty contract works really well is something called labeling. And again, I will leave a bunch of links in the description, and this has been tested again and again and again. And basically what it means is when we label or attribute a quality to somebody, they're more likely to behave consistent with that adjective or that description or that qualifier. In one study, Richard Miller and colleagues were able to get classrooms full of children to be more neat and tidy and throw their waste away in the bin as opposed to litter simply by calling them neat and tidy for some time before observing this behavior. So just by saying, oh, you're so neat, you're so tidy, they were able to actually cause that behavior to take place. Labeling simply means you give someone a label, you describe them in a certain way, and we have a tendency or a need to behave consistently with that description. So after the truth contract has been established, whenever somebody says something and I respond, I want to thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for being honest with me. I really appreciate your honesty. Each time this creates a label or an attribution. Now the person sees themselves as honest and they want to behave more in line with that label. They want to be more honest. They want to continue to be honest. So we're setting up this path of honesty. Another key component to emphasizing the truth is to keep the person in short-term thinking. So in interrogations, very often, just before the confession, the person starts to think about the consequences of just telling the truth. And often they start to break down, often they start to say, I can't go to jail, and things along those lines. This is enormously common just before a confession. And it's extremely important in that moment, and I'm not saying you're all gonna go out and interrogate criminals, but in any situation to keep the person in short-term thinking. So let's look at a beautiful example of this from the interrogation of Cassandritz Blanc.
I'm gonna get in prison.
Don't even think about that. Let's think about getting this stuff right. Where did it happen?
When Cassandritz says he's gonna get assaulted in prison, the interrogator says, don't think about that. Let's think about getting this stuff right. So again, that's a great example of short-term thinking. If you let their mind wander, and if you watch the whole interrogation, he does this a lot. In fact, at some point, Cassandritz asks for some time to, can I get 2 minutes? And the interviewer says, if I give you 2 minutes, you're gonna come with excuses and things like that. It's more important to just get the truth out.
Can I please have a moment, about 2 minutes, please?
But I'm going to sit right here with you. Are you going to be straight with me? See, but this, Cassandritz, you're getting ready to make the mistake that other people have made. The problem with you taking a moment is you're in that preservation mode, and you're trying to figure out how to put the best spin on it. And what happens is when you do that, you don't come off sincere, you don't come off honest. And that's all I want. I want the honest truth. I want the straight truth of what happened.
So he keeps trying to keep him in that short-term thinking and focusing and emphasizing the truth. And finally, we have made it to N. So we had optimistic outlook, we had project the blame, we had emphasize the truth, and now we have N, which again, it blends so well with the other three, and N stands for non-judgmental. So again, if you watch these interrogations, the one we're looking at, the one in the description, at no point is there ever something where we feel like the person is being judged. And this is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. If somebody believes that they're being judged, they will shut down. So this goes very much hand in hand with that optimistic outlook, but it's almost an extra element to that. So instead of just keeping it positive, on top of that, on top of projecting the blame onto others, never judge the person. So let's take a look in this interrogation of Cassandritz Blanc, how that played out.
I mean, look at you, you're not a fucking killer. You're not a killer. I can see you're eating fucking cookies. But something tripped, something flipped, and I want to know what it was. I mean, I want to know.
I love that. You're eating cookies because killers never eat cookies. There's never been a killer in history who enjoys cookies, but there's just something so fun about the way he presented that. He's like, you're not a killer, you're eating cookies. So again, I'm not judging you. I could see that you're eating cookies, so clearly you're not a killer. You did this horrible thing, but I would never judge you because you are someone who eats cookies, not a killer.
I know that you did not want to kill your wife. I know you didn't. I know that you didn't. But something tripped.
And that one kind of blurs the lines because it's non-judgmental, but it's also, optimistic. I know you didn't mean to do this, so the intention wasn't bad, but also there's that sort of vibe of I'm not judging you. So again, O and N really work together. So it's, what are some good intentions that can justify this? Or maybe not bad intentions that could justify this in a case like a horrifying murder. And also at the same time, you have to know I'm not judging you. And we're gonna be honest with each other. And I'm projecting blame on something else. So it's like a ballet. Now again, let's talk about why non-judgmental is very effective. The first reason is there's very few things in common to every interrogation that I've ever seen. Different people, different ways, some aggressive, some more calm, chill, all kinds of different things. But there's one thing I've never seen. I've never seen in any interrogation someone confess and just blurt everything out. I've never seen that. I've never seen like the moment where it cracks and everything just comes out. It may have happened, I've personally never seen it. The way I do see it in every interrogation I've ever seen, in every interview I've ever conducted, is the person will test the waters. little by little, to see how much they can trust you. So they'll put a little bit forward and see how you handle that. Then they'll put something else, and something bigger. Being non-judgmental is a really big part of comforting them into, okay, that went well, now I can give a little more. Okay, that went well. The moment you go, I knew it, you did this horrible thing, they shut down, they feel judged. The second reason non-judgmental is really, really important is because research shows that people who are telling the truth but fear not being believed behave very often in the same ways as someone who's being deceptive, someone who's lying. So if you're looking for someone to get nervous or oversell their story in order to, try to figure out where you need to ask more questions, or if there's a little bit of doubt in certain areas, always remember there's no amount of behavior that can allow us to know that someone's lying. Just red flags that let us know we need to ask more questions. But if you're looking for those signs, but the person feels judged, they might now start showing those signs even if they're telling the truth. So this is why in these interrogations, it's very non-confrontational, because the moment they feel that you're against them or they're judged, first of all, they're going to start acting nervous and stressed. And second, they're going to close up. All right, now we're going to look at a clip from the interrogation where OPEN is being used completely and beautifully. We see OPENN in this clip, but it's not the only place. Throughout this entire interrogation and the other interrogation of Colonel Russell Williams, if you watch them, you see that OPEN consistently being used, all of them together. But before we look at this clip, I want to recommend a couple of resources if you want to learn more about ways to talk to get the truth out of people. So first off, we have a book called Get the Truth. This is a phenomenal read. It is by 3 ex-CIA interrogators who interrogated internally to catch spies or people who are leaking information. And this entire book is devoted to how to script that conversation. So OPEN is not in here because OPEN is my acronym that I came up with to teach in my seminars because it's really easy to remember, open to get the truth. But in here, the exact same principles are taught in great depth. There's such great information here on scripting. The second book I want to recommend is Advanced Interviewing Techniques. And this is co-written by Joe Navarro, who was an FBI interrogator for decades, one of the best-selling authors on body language and interrogation in the world. And this book is also incredible. It's really easy to read, really easy to understand, well organized, and it's a whole bunch of tips on interviewing in any context. Anytime you want to get the truth out of someone, and it goes into such great detail. The research is in there that they quote, and it's just beautiful. So both these books I recommend very highly. I will leave links in the description to where you can get them delivered to your door. 5 stars, both of them.
Look, man, I'm telling you, when I sat here and I told you that you're not a killer, I sat here and I told you that I can look at you and I can see that remorse. You're f***ing crying, you're breaking down, man. You're sorry this happened. Tell me what happened. Let me put it down. Let me get it on the record. What happened? You didn't plan this out. Was it in the apartment?
So right there we could see how OPEN just all works together to the point where when you do OPEN right, the lines get blurred. So for example, told you you're not a killer. Well, that's optimistic because it's like, I know you're not a killer, but it's also non-judgmental. So it's a bit of O, a bit of N. Then we have, I can see that remorse. So again, that's a big N. Not judging. I could see the remorse. I feel bad. It's also, I would say, a bit of O, like a bit of optimistic. Like you're not a bad person. You're remorseful. Something bad happened, but you're not a bad person. So again, O and N. Then we have, you're crying, you're breaking down, you're sorry. Again, O, N, it's in that blurry middle gray area. Tell me what happened, let me put it down. So there we have E, emphasize the truth. Throughout this interrogation, and please go watch the whole thing, or at least that end, because in the beginning, like the first big chunk is just him putting down information, but in that end, we really see O-P-E-N, O-P-E-N. And at first, as you use these, they're gonna be separate things. But the more you get used to it, it just becomes part of your language, and they work together, and it's unbelievable to what extent you'll find yourself having conversations where people just open up to you, because this open just becomes part of the way you communicate. Now, before we go, I want to give you 2 specific scripts that I've composed using OPEN, because I want you to see how I use these together to get this really powerful script. And you could see how you can adapt this to whatever situation you find yourself in. So one of these was for a client of mine where they knew that some employees of the warehouse were clocking more hours than they were putting in, and they wanted to figure out who was being honest and who wasn't. And the other script was for some clients of a friend of mine who wanted to figure out if within their relationship, their romantic relationship, there was cheating happening. Now, before we do this, big warning, big disclaimer. Don't go throwing this around for fun just to see what kind of results you can get. Cheating is a very serious accusation. And this script was written for someone who really, really had their suspicions. There was a lot of things happening that led them to believe that this might be happening. Don't rock the boat if your relationship's going well. Apply these for something totally different when you're trying to get the truth out of someone. Don't start messing around with things just to figure out or just to practice these techniques. So the first script for the warehouse workers was as followed. I want you to know that I really appreciate the hard work that you put in here. I see you guys working, and I know that you putting in 5 or 6 hours in the warehouse is the equivalent of some other employees putting in 7 or 8 hours. You work hard and I really appreciate it. I also know that it's not easy out there. With the real estate prices going up, I get it. People are tight for money. I totally understand. I just need to know what's going on here so we can talk about it openly and figure out what changes need to be made for everyone to be happy. So there it is. Imagine how much more effective that is than, I know it was you, I know you're not coming into work, you're overcharging for your time, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, this confrontational thing. Instead of that, you focus on the positive, the hard work that they're putting in. You have that non-judgmental element of, I totally get it. You have the projecting the blame. It's tough out there. Real estate prices are more and more, rent is getting higher and higher. And of course you can adapt this. In this situation, it was 2 or 3 employees. Basically, it was find something positive about their work quality, project the blame on outside circumstances, and, no judgment. I totally understand. And then focus on the truth. Let's figure this out together so everyone can be happy. So again, open is just blended together to create a conversation that helps the truth come out. And the second one for the relationship, and again, please, please, please use this delicately. It's more of an inspiration for you to see how the scripting works. So please don't go throwing this around where it's not necessary. Again, this is a big accusation, but in this case, it was founded and the truth came out, unfortunately. But this was the script. It was, listen, I know you like to have fun, you like to enjoy yourself. In fact, it's one of the reasons that initially attracted me to you. And I know that lately our relationship hasn't been as exciting and adventurous as it used to be. We've both been busy at work, so I totally get it. I just would like to know if we could be honest with each other and put all the cards down on the table. That way we could talk about it and figure out where we need to go from here. So again, look at that in comparison to just accusing someone or lashing out at them. And none of it is deceptive, none of it is false. Just find whatever positive intention there might be. I think infidelity is one of the worst things on the planet, but maybe instead of looking at it as that, you could look at it as they were just trying to have a good time. They weren't trying to harm anyone. They were just out there trying to have a good time. They made a mistake. So focus on that. It was more about just spontaneous fun rather than hurting someone. So you can work that into the script and say, I know you like to have a good time. I know you would never hurt me. That's never your intention. So you could throw that in there as well. So optimistic, project the blame. Our relationship isn't, for a while, it's been on the rocks. We've both been busy. I've been very busy with work. So you take a bit of accountability there. If you can, if there's anything you can take accountability for, emphasize the truth. I think I would love if we could just talk about this honestly and non-judgmental. It's okay. I get it. I understand. I'm not judging. You're a good person. So all that kind of stuff. All right, so there it was, a lot of information to unpack there, and there's quite a few books and videos that you can look at to increase your knowledge with this kind of scripting that will just get the truth out more often. Please let me know what you thought in the comments. If you have any ideas or scripts that you're working on yourself for a specific situation, let me know in the comments. I love that it's a community here. We could help each other out. So, I don't always see all the comments, but if one of you has a scenario, you guys can workshop it, put it in the comments. You guys can help each other out once you understand this. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.